Oh boy, am I excited for this one. Guys, today is the day I've been waiting for, well, really since No Way Home. We are going to see Spider-Man Brand New Day in theaters.
I heard Spider-Man was there.
I was going to go alone, but thankfully a friend came to save the day. I don't like going to theaters alone. I've never been a fan of that. I did it for the Odyssey. It was fine for that, but you know what? I'm excited. We're going to have a good time, and I can't wait to come back and tell you how I felt about it. Just stay tuned, because it'll be literally in a few seconds for you guys.
A few moments later.
Huh?
Okay, we are back from the theater. It's midnight. This is probably going to be the latest review that I've ever done. I've never recorded outside either. We got to talk about it. We got to do it. We got to talk about it. Man, you know, it's late. I really don't feel like doing a whole crazy thing with the setup or anything, so this is what you're going to get today. Okay, honestly, I don't really know how to go about this review, if I'm being, like, really honest with myself. This is definitely the most torn I've ever been about a Spider-Man film, of Tom Holland's at least, in general. I left the theater, and not only did I leave the theater, in the last few minutes of the movie, I just sat there kind of like just totally just stonewalled at the screen, because I feel like we got teased really hard. It almost in a way felt cheap to me. But I'm trying my hardest not to let the last few minutes of this movie ruin my experience I had with it. This is, we're going to jump into spoilers. There's no other way to do this review. I'm not going to do a spoiler-free. We're just going to jump right into spoilers for this. Spider-Man Brand New Day is probably my... I don't want to say what I'm feeling, because again, I feel like this is too much on emotion. I'll say it, but I don't think I really mean this. At the time of me recording this right now, I think this is my least favorite of the Tom Holland, of the four of them. Now, let me be clear. I have never seen or read any of the comics. I've never seen any of the Avengers or anything like that. Spider-Man has always been something I loved. I've always been a huge freak for New York City. I lived there for 3 years. It's always felt close to home. It's always been just a very nice story with a very nice just message through and through. It always has been. So it's always resonated with me. So I've always had that connection to it, but I've never read the comics. I've never seen any of the Avengers, all of that stuff. So I'm not too well known in the universe. I didn't even know who Jean Grey was, to be completely, I didn't know who that was. They were making it like Jean Grey. I was like, okay, who the fuck is that? I had no idea. That's how little I know. I know the Punisher exists. I know Scorpion exists. I love Michael Mando from Better Call Saul. Like, I know those things, but I don't really know the lore. So when I give my experience and how I feel about this, it comes from a place of that. As a movie viewer who hasn't really immersed himself in the comics or anything of the sort, or the lore of Spider-Man, I was honestly a little bit disappointed because, okay, well, we just have to rip the Band-Aid off. No Way Home is my favorite Spider-Man movie of all time. Hands down. I loved that movie, and I've seen some debate over the years of, was it really that good, or was it just a theater event? No, I've seen it so many times, I genuinely do think it's that good. I loved that film. I thought it was a great movie. Homecoming was another great movie, and off the top of my head, the other one in that trilogy is a very good movie too. The one with Mysterio was just, I loved that film. That was another great one. This one, I know that it was going for a different sort of direction. I totally understand that. I'm not here to dispute that or anything of the sort, but this one just fell flat to me. Just to be completely honest, this one fell flat. And like I always talk about on this channel, by the way, if you're not subscribed to this channel, go ahead and do so. I always rate a story on how immersed I am in it. There was many moments in there towards the end where I wasn't so immersed, and we're going to get into the reasons for that. I might as well start with the pros. There are a lot of them, despite what I'm saying about it. That's why I'm torn about it. I'm not willing to fully commit to the idea that this is my least favorite. I'm riding on an emotion of how I felt about the ending, which we will get to. So let's start with the pros. Frank and Frank and Peter, I should say, John Bernthal and Tom Holland was the best part of this movie, hands down. I've never seen The Punisher, but I've always loved John Bernthal, and I've always really liked Tom Holland. And the two of them have this chemistry in the movie that is unmatched. It really just makes the movie sing. There's no other way to put it. The two of them just work so well together and did work so well in this film together. I thought they were so great. The Punisher was funny. Like, I enjoyed everything he had to offer, but he had this emotional depth to him. They played like a whiny couple. It worked so well, and their chemistry is so crazy, and it's so weird. It's like, I just got done seeing The Odyssey, where they were in that together and had a bond in that movie. Now I'm seeing them in here. The duo of Tom Holland and John Bernthal just works, whether it is their characters in The Odyssey or whether it's here. Their chemistry as actors is just wonderful, even when it comes down to the interviews I've seen of them just doing press for these movies. It really was the best part of the movie, especially like the ending scene where Peter Parker, after he's shot, and Frank has to put on the Peter Parker suit and things like that. That was so great. It was so wonderful. Their banter throughout the whole film was my favorite part of it, for sure. I will also say, as a big pro, going off of that point real quickly before I get into the other point I was about to make with it, that scene was beautiful. I absolutely love the scene where Peter Parker goes off anonymously and cheers with the crowd at the celebration that Spider-Man is alive and okay. I loved that. I thought it was a beautiful thing. I loved another detail let me say the next big part I was going to say. This is Tom Holland's best performance of the Spider-Man, I was going to say trilogy, but of the Spider-Man movies he's been in. This is by far his best performance. Hands down. That's attributed. He's getting older. He's continuing to grow in his craft and get better and better, and it really shines. I think he absolutely just does such a fantastic job in this film in that regard. Another thing I loved about this movie is I loved that we finally got to see Peter Parker, we got to see Spider-Man, I should say, doing Spider-Man things in the city. One of the best things about Spider-Man in general is the celebration of New York City and this larger-than-life figure fighting crime in the city. And it felt believable, it felt right, and it was great to see from Tom Holland's Spider-Man. The one thing I didn't like about the Home trilogy that we got is I didn't like that it felt very CG, it felt very Avengers, even though I've never seen the Avengers. It just felt very Marvel Cinematic Universe, whereas this almost felt like Spider-Man 2, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, and it almost also felt like the grittiness of the Amazing Spider-Man. It had characteristics of both for a majority of the runtime. I loved seeing Spider-Man fighting crime. I even liked the slow montages of him. I loved the beginning where we got all of these villains like Scorpion and all of them, and he was fighting all of it. I liked it. I liked Spider-Man's new suit. I liked the lack of technology in this movie in regards to his suit, even though there is some there, of course. The best way I could describe it is the first three kind of felt like an Iron Manification of Spider-Man, which I didn't like, even though I loved those movies. This felt like Spider-Man, but finally a Tom Holland Spider-Man, if that makes any sense. So I do think the movie gives it justice there, and I think it actually really shines in that regard. So that's definitely a strong pro. And this is why, by the way, I'm so fucking torn about the movie. So these are big pros. Another big pro is a lot of the scenes we did get with MJ, Zendaya's character, and Ned. I liked that, the CEO of Sex. I thought those scenes were really good that we did get. My big cons are what we didn't get. We will get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. One of the scenes that come to mind as a strong pro is the pro itself of them just sitting in a room together, Ned, MJ, and masked Spider-Man, and they're all relinquishing their days, even though they don't know they are. Peter knows they are. I loved that. I even really liked this whole this whole arachnid hormones were rising sort of story. I enjoyed that. I thought that was cool. I liked the concept that his technology wasn't working, so he had to go back to his original form, or his arachnid form, and learn to tame that. I liked that a lot. But yeah, those are my pros. I guess another big pro, I loved the shots of the city. I used to work at the JP Morgan Tower, so seeing that open the movie, I got a little bit of time in there before I quit working there. Great company to work for, but I got a little bit of time. So when the shot opens and I see the JP Morgan Tower in there, I'm like, holy shit, I used to work there. I thought that was so cool. I loved little details like that. It feels so close to home. It's so nice to see this city represented in such a nice way. It even goes down to the credit sequence at the end of the film. I loved seeing beautiful shots of the city. The city is one of my favorite places on earth. I've been to a lot of places. It's such a wonderful spot. And I think this movie really captured that very, very well, for sure. So there are those things. I think of all the pros, the Punisher and Peter Parker was the strongest element. Their dynamic. But there was, again, that's why I'm so torn on this movie. There were so many pros that I really did like that made this movie shine, to the point where a lot of my cons, even though I feel more strongly about them right now, I kind of want to see this movie again to just recontextualize my opinion. But now we get to the cons, and the cons really just spoke for itself for me, and I left this theater honestly very disappointed. I'm not going to lie. I felt the biggest con to me of this, well, no, not the biggest con. One of the most glaring issues with this movie to me is it felt all fucking over the place. It felt like they tried to cram in so much into this movie, to the point where it took me out of it and I was not immersed in this movie. And I always say on my channel, if a movie or a TV show can break my immersion, it did something wrong. If it keeps my immersion, it did everything right. That's something I hold very true. And this film just broke my immersion a lot of the time because I feel like it just jumped around from things too much. I think the story was cohesive. I'm not here to argue that it wasn't cohesive. I think the message that it gave was good, and it did follow a clear path. But a prime example of what I mean about it just feeling like there was too much shit going on is Tremel Tillman's storyline, which I didn't care for. Jean Grey's storyline, which admittedly I didn't care for, and I like Sadie Sink a lot, so it sucks for me to admit that. The most glaring of it, to me, is Scorpion and Michael Mando's character. Those scenes could have been deleted. The Scorpion scenes specifically, they could have been deleted. What the fuck was his character? What did it do? What plot did it serve? Other than to show a scene where Spider-Man in his arachnid form goes a little bit over the deep end and almost gets a cop killed. Okay, fine. But he didn't do anything. And honestly, even from the trailers, I was not excited to see it. Another prime example of this is the Hulk. Okay, like why was he even there? Just to pad the runtime. Really, honestly, that's what it felt like. It took me out of the story and I'm like, okay, they just wanted to throw the Hulk in there so in the trailers they could get more people to be like, oh my god, the Hulk's in the movie? I gotta go see this now. I did not like that. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't think it was really good at all. I didn't enjoy it. So there was that. Those things took me out of the immersion. Honestly, another thing that took me out of the immersion a lot is the Jean Grey story. And I know for comic fans and all of that, apparently Jean Grey is a pretty big character, especially as it relates to, I believe, the X-Men. You guys might kill me for not knowing this stuff, but I don't. So as a fan who doesn't, I didn't care for that story really at all. I did enjoy what it did towards the end with Jean Grey putting that like dome sort of vortex thing on the city. I enjoyed that, but I didn't really understand it, especially when we cut to scenes of Ned and MJ, like crying, looking at each other. Maybe I missed it. Were they all remembering Peter Parker in that moment? Were they all feeling Sadie Sink or Jean Grey and feeling her emotions when they were frozen? I understand that she goes into people, so I'm going to guess it's the latter. I just didn't really get it. And I feel like that was a thing. Like when it was first introduced that there was this thing morphing in through people, I thought that was really cool and something I really liked. But then as it developed, it felt like it just padded the runtime away from things that I wanted to see, which brings me to my biggest con by far. And that's the way they delivered on the MJ Peter Parker story. I am never have been here for a love story solely. I'm not a fan of that. But one of the things that made the emotional weight of No Way Home work so well, despite seeing all the Spider-Men in there, was this, actually, it was obviously the concept that Peter Parker had to make everyone forget him again, including MJ and Ned. The scene that really stuck that for me was the very end coffee scene where Peter decides not to right now. And I get it, and I understand that that's where the movie ended, but that whole thing was such a beautiful thing that I was so excited to see continue in this story, and it did. I'm not going to sit here and say they didn't. I just don't like the way that it was executed. It felt like a fucking striptease, if I'm being completely honest. And look, again, like I said, I'm not here for the sap shit. I don't give a shit about it. But it really does feel like they were like, here you go, like, here's the keys, like you play with a baby, like, here's the keys, play with the keys. That's what it felt like, just not to give anything. I do know at the very end of the movie, we got something with Ned. That was the very, very end of the movie. But, like, yeah, sure, that's cool for Ned. I want to see it with MJ. And I feel like they just teased it too much to the point where it almost felt like this was done as a cash grab to get us invested in the next story, which I'm going to guess is Venom. I don't really know what space stuff is. I just remember there was a space thing with Venom in Spider-Man 3. I don't fucking know. That's all I'm saying. But going back to this point, I feel like all of the scenes that played out, except for like 2 of them, fell emotionally flat in those areas that I cared the most about going in. Now, that being said, I love that we got to see Spider-Man feeling so lonely from what he did. I loved that. I thought that was great. That was another thing I should have put in the pros. But when it came to delivering on those things by giving us Zendaya and Tom Holland in a scene together, I feel like they fell flat. I really do. The scene I did like the most, I think, with them is the scene where Zendaya is on the bed and Peter Parker or Tom Holland is sitting there working on his deoxyribonucleic acid shit or whatever the fuck it is. I don't know. He has his mask off and they're talking. That was a nice moment. What didn't really work for me, obviously, was when Zendaya tells Tom Holland later when she reads the letter that like she doesn't love him and stuff like that. I understand it. I'm not here to argue that it didn't make sense. Like if she really doesn't remember Peter Parker, then it makes sense that she wouldn't love him. That like obviously, I just think that scene fell a little flat to me, to be honest. And I didn't like the tease in the beginning, which honestly we knew would be too good to be true. That you're watching it and you're like, okay, well, this is like too soon for this to happen in the movie. I guess that's my problem, is they teased it so early on with this reveal happening. And then everything that came was more of an implication of that revelation than anything. I don't know how to convey that into words. At some point in this video, I'm going to put my reaction face on screen because I filmed myself at the end of this movie. Everyone stayed for the ending sequence. Everyone stayed for when the credits rolled. And I'm sitting there like, that's it? Where's the Zendaya scene? What? Again, not that I need to see anything like that. It's not... It just feels like they spent so much time in this movie setting that up for it not to be paid off at all is egregious. I don't understand how they did that. That was very, very, very disappointing to me. And it felt like in my theater, everyone was staying waiting. We do know, waiting, I should say. We do know that in the MCU, they always do a post-credit scene. We do know that. But it almost felt like, and I heard a lot of people going like at the very end of the movie, because I feel like a lot of people were waiting to see if there was a post-credit scene with Zendaya at all, and there wasn't. It just feels weird to leave it off on Ned. It gives me hope for Spider-Man 5, because we do know that Spider-Man will return based on the post-credit scene. But now, I just don't know. I left the theater very disappointed at the way that was resolved. Was it great to see Ned remember Peter? Yes, that was great. But I just don't care as much for Ned as I do MJ in this story. That holds a lot of emotional weight. It feels like the one last thing that Peter has going for him, especially towards the end when we got to the end when he's like, I know what I'm going to do. I need to be with people, stuff like that. It feels very jarring to not get that in this movie. It feels like, you know what it feels like? It feels like we are in like episode 9 of a 10 episode show. And there's like another episode that we're supposed to get next week, but we're not going to get it for like 2 fucking years. You know what I mean? I just don't like that when there's so much time in between these movies because they take a while because these actors are busy and all of this stuff. You leave a big component on the table. And I get it, you can't do everything in one movie. From a business perspective and a business decision, you don't want to do that because you want people to keep seeing your movies. And that is a big stake in seeing those movies. So you obviously want to drive ticket sales and have people going to Spider-Man 5. But it just, the way it was done felt very cheap to me. That's how I feel about it. And that sums up my whole thoughts. So those cons, I know they're smaller in the grand scheme of things than a lot of the pros I had. That's why I'm so torn on this movie. But the cons shined brighter, and not in a good way. I guess you could say they shine darker if we're talking in terms of negativity. What I mean to say is the cons felt more significant than the pros, even though there were more pros in this movie. I think I need to see this a second time to really formulate my opinion. So this is my first impressions of the movie. Maybe I'll come back when I see it a second time, but as of right now, I am just so torn. I saw it with a friend, and my friend and I were we left the theater both I don't know how I felt about this movie. Look, again, to me, nothing beats No Way Home. It's hard to do. It would be hard to do in 4, so I'm not trying to compare it to that. I'm trying to think of it as a standalone thing. And the pros that were pros really pro'd, but the cons really did drag the movie down. So that's how I feel. I'd love to hear from you. How do you feel about the movie? Did you feel the same way? Did you feel different? I'd love to know. But with all that out of the way, thank you again so much for watching this video. I'm going to go to bed. It is way past my bedtime and I have work in the morning. And until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Peace out.